I manage a crosswalk safety program in Oslo. And last summer, this American tourist stood at a pedestrian crossing for 3 full minutes. Waving cars through like he was directing traffic at JFK, drivers kept stopping, confused because that's what you do at a zebra crossing here. He kept gesturing more frantically, shouting, "Go, go, I insist." One driver finally rolled down her window and told him, "Pedestrians have right-of-way, by law." He looked offended and said, "In America, we don't just assume we own the road. It's called being polite," and he sprinted across during a gap in traffic he created himself. My cousin in Copenhagen watched an American woman stop dead at a crosswalk, look both ways 4 times, then jog across apologetically while cars sat there honking. Not angry honking, confused honking. She knocked on one driver's window afterward to apologize for cutting him off. He told her she had right of way. She said, "But you were here first. That's how fairness works." He explained the law again. She replied, "In Boston, pedestrians who act entitled get hit. I'm not risking it for some Scandinavian experiment." She then waited for a completely empty road before crossing back in Reykjavik. My friend who works at a rental car agency had an American driver come in furious because he kept getting brake checked by locals. Turns out he was mad that Icelandic drivers actually stop at crosswalks. He said drivers back home wouldn't slam their brakes for someone who's not even in the road yet. When my friend explained the law, he said, "That's how you cause rear-end collisions. Whoever designed that system never drove in real traffic. I worked the front desk at a Tokyo train station. And this American businessman got irate because people wouldn't move aside when he was clearly in a hurry. Oh, no. In Japan, you stand to one side of the escalator if you're not walking. He was blocking the walking side, bags spread across 2 steps, confused why people kept saying "sumimasen" behind him. When a station attendant politely asked him to move right, he said, "I'm standing exactly where the stairs put me. If they wanted to pass, they should have gotten on first." The attendant explained the unwritten rule. He responded, "In New York, if there's space, it's yours. First come, first served." I'm not reorganizing my luggage because 12 people didn't plan their commute. He rode 3 more escalators the same way before someone physically squeezed past him. He called it typical pushy behavior and filed a complaint about Japanese rudeness. My brother works at a parking garage in Amsterdam. And last spring, an American couple parked their rental car across 2 bike lane spaces, then came inside asking for validation. He told them they'd blocked a cycle path. The husband said, "Those lines are way too narrow for cars anyway. We're doing everyone a favor by not squeezing in and dinging doors." My brother explained that bikes have dedicated infrastructure here and cars don't park there ever. The wife cut in, saying, "In Phoenix, if there's pavement, you can park on it unless there's a sign." We didn't see a sign in English. My brother pointed to the enormous bike symbol painted on the ground. The husband squinted and said, "That could be anything. Modern art? A decoration? Who knows? You can't expect tourists to decode every doodle." Got towed an hour later and spent the afternoon arguing with the towing company about vague municipal symbolism. I'm a city tour guide in Melbourne, and an American visitor on my walking group refused to wait at a pedestrian light even though the crossing signal was red. She said, "There's no traffic coming. This is a waste of everyone's time." I explained that jaywalking fines here are steep and cops actually enforce them. She scoffed and said, "In Chicago, those buttons are placebos. Nothing happens if you press them. Nothing happens if you don't. The lights run on a timer completely unrelated to pedestrians." I told her Victoria takes road rules seriously. She replied, "That's performative. Nobody's getting hurt if I cross an empty street. This is like waiting for permission to breathe." She walked across mid-sentence. A transit officer wrote her a ticket 30 seconds later. She told him she was being efficient and tried to argue that American tourists should get a cultural exemption. He did not agree. My uncle drives a tram in Zurich. He once had to emergency stop because an American tourist stepped directly onto the tracks while filming a video. She had headphones in, filming herself, completely unaware that trams don't swerve. He rang the bell 5 times. She didn't move. He braked hard enough that passengers stumbled. When she finally looked up, she yanked out her earbuds and yelled, "Why are you driving on the sidewalk?" He told her she was standing on tram tracks. She said, "These are set into the pavement. How is anyone supposed to know they're active?" In San Francisco, the cable cars have huge signs and bells constantly ringing. He pointed to the overhead electric lines, the clear track markings, and the bell he'd been ringing. She huffed and said, "Well, in California, infrastructure is intuitive. You don't need an engineering degree to cross the street." She stood there for another minute reviewing her footage before moving. "I work at an outdoor cafe in Stockholm, and this American guy flagged me down 3 times in 10 minutes because no one had brought him a menu. We don't do table service for outdoor seating. There's a counter inside. You order, you sit, we bring it out." He didn't know this. When I finally explained, he said, "So you just let customers sit here indefinitely, starving with no guidance? That's a business model?" I told him most locals know the system. He replied, "In Dallas, a server greets you within 90 seconds or the restaurant's failing. This is like a cafeteria with delusions of grandeur." He went inside, ordered, came back out, and then flagged me down again 20 minutes later asking for his check. I told him he'd already paid at the counter. He stared at me and said, "Then what exactly is your job?" I told him I bring out food. He muttered something about Europe not understanding customer service and left no tip, which didn't matter because we don't tip in Sweden. My sister works at a street food stall in Bangkok. An American couple ordered pad thai, then got upset because it came with a wedge of lime, bean sprouts, and ground peanuts on the side instead of pre-mixed properly. The husband told her, "In America, the chef finishes the dish. You don't serve deconstructed meals and make the customer do the work." My sister explained that Thai street food is always served with condiments, so you adjust it yourself. The wife said, "That's a liability issue. What if someone's allergic and doesn't realize these are ingredients, not garnishes?" My sister pointed to the clear plastic containers labeled with pictures. The husband replied, "Pictures aren't warnings. You need a full allergen chart in English, printed, laminated, accessible. We could sue for this back home." They took a photo of their meal for evidence, ate the entire thing while complaining, then left a 1-star review about incomplete food that required assembly. I manage a Paquego restaurant in Buenos Aires, and last year, an American diner kept snapping his fingers at our waitstaff to get attention. In Argentina, you make eye contact or raise your hand slightly. Snapping fingers is infantilizing. One of our servers, polite as possible, told him we'd be right with him. He snapped again 2 minutes later, louder. When she came over, he said, "In Miami, snapping is efficient. It's a sound that cuts through noise. Eye contact is passive and ineffective in a busy restaurant." She told him it's considered rude here. He replied, "Rude is ignoring a paying customer. I'm being direct, which is respectful of everyone's time." He snapped 4 more times that night. The table next to him asked to move. When he paid, told me the service was weirdly standoffish and suggested we train staff to respond to clear auditory signals. I suggested he learn to wave. I work at a beer garden in Munich, and an American tourist asked me to move his pretzel from a communal table because someone else might eat it by mistake. At beer gardens here, you sit wherever there's space, often with strangers. Food gets delivered to your general area, and you keep track of your own order. He didn't trust this. He said, "In Houston, every plate has a designated seat. You don't just scatter food around and hope people are honest. That's chaos with extra steps." I told him no one's taking his pretzel. He replied, "You don't know that? You're not monitoring. This is an honor system in a high-traffic environment which statistically guarantees theft." He moved tables 3 times, trying to find one defensible enough. Each time, he'd relocate his beer and pretzel like he was setting up a perimeter. By the time he finished eating, his pretzel was cold, and he'd annoyed 2 separate groups by hovering near their seats asking if this spot was claimed. I sell tickets at a train station in Prague, and an American backpacker insisted I was scamming him because the ticket price to Vienna was too cheap to be real. A 2-hour train ride cost less than what he'd paid for airport parking in Denver. He said there's no way this is legitimate. Either you're undercharging and the train doesn't actually go there, or there's a hidden fee you'll add at the end. I've seen this scam before. Showed him the official price chart on the wall. He He squinted at it and said, "That's in crowns." Convert it honestly. Not with some inflated tourist rate. Converted it. Same price. He replied, "In America, train tickets cost triple this for half the distance because we have safety standards and unions. If your trains are this cheap, they're either unsafe or exploiting workers." He bought the ticket while muttering about European corner cutting and came back 2 hours later delighted because the train had free Wi-Fi and coffee. He did not apologize. My nephew works for a rideshare company in Singapore, and he picked up an American passenger who spent the entire ride arguing that Orchard Road couldn't possibly be the main shopping district, because it's just one street in her mind. Shopping districts were sprawling multi-block zones like Fifth Avenue or Rodeo Drive, she said. "You're telling me an entire city does luxury retail on a single road? That's not economically viable. There has to be overflow streets you're not mentioning." Explained that Orchard Road is actually very long with tons of malls. She replied, "In LA, a shopping district means a neighborhood, not a street. This is false advertising. If I wanted one road, I'd go to a strip mall." She made him drive down 3 parallel streets, looking for the real shopping area. Found nothing, then accused him of gatekeeping. When he dropped her off at her hotel, she left a review saying Singapore lies about its infrastructure. "I work at a language school in Barcelona, and an American student got frustrated during her first week because everyone keeps speaking Catalan even though this is Spain. She'd assumed Spanish was the only language here. When I explained Catalonia has its own language, she said, that's splitting hairs. It's like if Texas had a separate language from English. Technically possible, but impractical. I told her millions of people speak Catalan daily. She replied, "In Florida, we have Spanish speakers everywhere, and they still learn English for convenience. You can't expect tourists to learn 2 languages for one country. That's a planning failure." She spent 3 weeks asking locals to just switch to regular Spanish and couldn't understand why some refused. On her last day, she told me Barcelona would get more tourists if it committed to one language properly. I told her Barcelona gets 40 million tourists a year. She said that proved her point because imagine how many more would come if it was less complicated. I'm a flight attendant based in Dublin, and I had an American passenger ask me, mid-flight, "What state is Ireland in?" I thought he was joking. He wasn't, and I said, "Ireland is a country," he replied, "right? But like, what part of the UK?" I explained the Republic of Ireland is independent. He said, "But you speak English? You use euros? And you're near England? That's basically UK." I clarified that Ireland has been independent since 1922, he responded. "In school, we learned the British Isles are all part of Britain. I'm not saying you're wrong, but that's what the maps showed." I told him those maps were outdated or mislabeled. He said, "Or maybe Ireland just likes to think it's independent for cultural reasons. Like how Puerto Rico has its own flag but is still American." I'm not here to debate politics. He then asked if he needed his passport to enter the UK part when we landed. I told him he was landing in Ireland, which is not the UK, and yes, he needed his passport. He looked annoyed, like I was overcomplicating things on purpose. I coordinate a walking safety campaign in Wellington. And last month, an American expat told me she'd finally figured out why New Zealanders stop at every crosswalk. She said it's because your cars are slower, so drivers have more reaction time. In America, our cars are faster and roads are bigger, so pedestrians have to wait. It's physics. I told her it's actually just law and culture. She replied, same thing. Laws reflect infrastructure reality. She'd been living here 8 months and still sprinted across crosswalks during gaps instead of waiting for cars to stop. When I asked why, she said muscle memory. You can't deprogram 20 years of survival instinct. I told her she was legally allowed to walk. She said, allowed and safe are different things. The funniest part about these stories is they all end the same way. The American gets corrected, doubles down on their logic, and eventually adapts while insisting they were right all along and the rest of the world is just doing it wrong efficiently. Maybe next time someone tries to outplight a Norwegian crosswalk, they'll remember that confidence doesn't override traffic law, but I doubt it. If you've ever witnessed an American abroad treating pedestrian retuvway like a suggestion or attempting to negotiate with a tram, Drop your story in the comments. I'll be reading them while waiting at a crosswalk that actually works.